When I'm editing thumbnails for my videos, I almost always need to remove the background from the photos of my pieces. Some software can do that automatically, but most of the ones I know are subscription services, and I'm not throwing money at that. Instead, I do it using GIMP. Now, I don't mean I have someone with particular taste to do my photo editing for me. GIMP is a free photo editing application available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. You can find a link to their site in the description. Also in the description you will find a link to my Patreon, where I will be leaving the source image and the example files as free downloads in case you want to follow along. As usual, the more work you can do in the camera, the less work you will need to do later. We will need a photo where the background is neutral with a high contrast with the subject. In most cases, I use a sheet of paper with no creases, but if you're shooting a very light colored subject, you should of course use a dark colored background. You do not need to eliminate all the background. This shot from a previous video thumbnail has a very visible background, but the subject is isolated from that, so it's easy to clean it out. We want to eliminate shadows as much as we can, so usually I try to have some distance between the subject and the background. I also like to put the subject on something that raises it off the floor of the shot, but depending on your lighting setup that might not be necessary. For reference here, I'm using a crafting light that I bought from Lidl and my living room lights. Once you have shot your photo, go ahead and open them in GIMP. The first thing we're going to do is make a copy of our original layer. And we're going to rename the copy to work. We're just going to hide the original so that we have something to fall back to in case something goes wrong. Now you can skip the next step if you have a great lighting setup and you know what you're doing with the camera, which is not the case with me in both cases, so I'm going to go to Colors and select Levels. Now pick the picker which matches your background, light or dark, and select an area which should be the background color but isn't quite, maybe because of shadows or light falling on it. Let's say here, for example. Okay, that should be much truer to the original colors. Now I'm going to duplicate this again, and I'm going to call the new layer Mask. Back to the Colors menu, and we're selecting Curves this time. What we want to do is darken the image a bit, but not so much that we get a totally dark background. This is way too much, for example. Something like this should be enough. Okay, next we're going to go to Desaturate and Desaturate by Luminance. Then Brightness Contrast, and we're going to crank the contrast all the way up and start lowering the brightness until we start getting too much noise in the background. Yeah, around here seems fine. Okay, now if you use the light color background, like I did, we're going to need to invert the colors. Since we're going to use this as a mask, the white areas will be visible and the black areas will be transparent. And right now we have the opposite of that. So we're just going to go to Colors and Invert. Now we just need to clean up the rest. For the bulk of it, we can just use the Path tool and draw a rough outline around our model. Zoom in here to get a good line around the base. And invert the selection. We can just fill this with black. Okay, now we're going to take the paintbrush tool and switch to white. Make sure it's absolutely pure white. If it's gray, it's going to become translucent. Okay, just need to go over here with short strokes and fill in these gaps. You're going to get these everywhere we had a very light color on the model. But it's easy to fill this in. Okay, it's best to go in small bursts so that if something goes wrong, you can just undo that quickly, rather than losing quite a bit of work, which you get if you're holding the mouse button down. Okay, next we're going to switch the color to black, again pure black, so it's not translucent. And we're going to pick off any remaining bits. Is the spot here? And there, okay. So now we have this silhouette which will act as a masking layer. Let's go to the edit menu and copy visible. Now we can hide the mask and go to the work layer. Right click and add layer mask. Doesn't matter which one you pick here. Add. Make sure that the mask is selected and paste the mask in. Now you can anchor the layer and you've got your mask selection. Now if you zoom in very close, you will notice that there's this slight outline. Normally I don't bother to remove it because if it's used on any kind of light background, it won't really show up. But if you use it on a dark background, that's going to give you that white outline which you might not want. So what I do in this case is go back to the mask layer and pick fuzzy select. Select my mask, then go to select, invert, and select grow. And let's grow it by about 5 pixels. Next we can fill up the mask layer. And that's gone. Okay, next if you notice that you missed any spots, like these for example, you can just pick the white brush. Again, we're still on the mask layer. And we can fill them in. And there you have your transparent image. That's about it for background removal in GIMP, but there are a few more options. Several mobile apps offer automatic background removal. Sam from the basic brush recommended photo room, for example. The result is pretty much identical to what I did with GIMP, but the free version at least downscaled the image, which I am not a fan of. Anyway, I hope this was useful. Take care and see you around. Bye!